since James Comer has shown now we can invite or demand that a president appear before the committee, Donald Trump will be appearing before the committee. This is going to turn around very swiftly, and this is why we try to counsel people always avoid the abuse of power, because eventually the wheel turns.
Hillary Clinton, former U.S. Secretary of State, has been speaking to the media after her first appearance in front of the House Oversight Committee. She was answering questions about her family's connections to the late convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein.
It was disappointing that they refused to hold a public hearing, so I wouldn't have to be out here characterizing it for you. You could have seen it for yourself. We had asked for that. We think it would have been better for the committee and its efforts to gather whatever information they are seeking.
If the hearing wasn't dramatic enough, there was a pause in proceedings after a photo was leaked from inside the closed-door session. Well, let's speak to Rick Wilson, former Republican strategist and founder of the Lincoln Project. First of all, Rick, welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
What do you think of the reasons for inviting Hillary Clinton to give evidence and the kinds of questions she was asked?
Well, we don't have the full rundown of all the questions she was asked yet, but the only purpose for bringing her there today was to feed the MAGA media spectacle machine. She has no direct contact with Jeffrey Epstein, according to her. And if they had evidence that they were in contact, it would have been front and center. This is purely to take the spotlight off of Donald Trump and off the folks that are very close to Trump who have been deeply implicated in the Epstein files, including his own Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, and a number of other folks that Trump cares deeply about their protecting, himself not least amongst them.
Hillary Clinton said these proceedings should have been done in public. If they were,
Sure.
What do you think the impact might have been compared to what we've seen thus far?
Well, look, you would have had James Comer, who is, to be perfectly blunt, not the brightest man seated in an elected office in America today, getting wrung out to dry by Hillary Clinton. And the idea that it would have been in public would have made them conform their behavior a little bit differently than they would behind closed doors. They were also hoping to do it behind closed doors so they could find some gotcha, some sort of thing to leak, some sort of thing to turn into a micro scandal. And clearly they didn't. And if it had been a public hearing, she would have shamed them. She would have humiliated them in public. She would have gone at them and talked about things that apparently she said in the room. Why don't you have Elon Musk testify? He was in deep contact with Epstein. Why don't you talk to Donald Trump? Why haven't you deposed him? On and on and on. They knew the risk of doing this in public was too great for them. Look, love Hillary Clinton or hate her, she is an experienced public official. She came into the room today loaded for bear and knew what she was doing. That is why they had to hide this thing and try to pretend it didn't exist.
Right. And even though they couldn't lay a finger on her, they've decided to invite her husband, Bill Clinton, former president, to testify tomorrow. Now, we know, did take trips on Epstein's plane. We've seen pictures of him in a swimming pool or a jacuzzi. I can't remember what it was. How much more vulnerable might he be?
Look, Bill Clinton has a long reputation as a dog, as we say in America. Look, I think he's going to be a little bit more on defense than she was. And I think one of the things about Bill Clinton that people have consistently underestimated, I know we certainly did when I was a Republican, is his ability to turn around a meeting or turn around an event in his favor. And these guys are no Bill Clintons. They are not sophisticated thinkers. They are running a very simple script that's been given to them by the White House and by folks like Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche, who are running the Epstein cover-up for Donald Trump. And I think Clinton, he may be an old dog, but I think he probably still has a trick or two left in him. And look, he has to answer those questions. When did you go to the island? How many times? All those things. He has to be blunt about those things. He has to answer them correctly and legally and properly and truthfully.
Right. And if the Republicans lose the House in the midterms, might this session be reignited? What do you think?
Oh, I would like to caution my former Republican friends that the boot fits perfectly well on the other foot, and everything you think is happening now that is of great use to you for the MAGA media machine will be turned around, and we will be talking to people like Todd Blanche, who gave Ghislaine Maxwell's sweetheart deal. We will be talking to everybody up and down the chain who ever worked for Donald Trump, who knew anything about Jeffrey Epstein. And since James Comer has shown now we can invite or demand that a president appear before the committee, Donald Trump will be appearing before the committee. This is going to turn around very swiftly, and this is why we try to counsel people always avoid the abuse of power, because eventually the wheel turns and you will be the one in the crosshairs.
I hear, Rick, that a pamphlet or memo is circulating among White House insiders suggesting ways in which President Trump might be able to postpone or even cancel the midterms. Are you across this, and how credible do you think this is?
Look, it is quite credible. This is the next attempt they're going to make. They tried to do this legislatively through what they called the SAVE Act. The Senate Majority Leader John Thune said today to Punchbowl News in the U.S., nope, it's not going to happen. The votes are not there, and so he is now going to go to the extraordinary extra legal step of declaring a fake crisis to seize a fake power to solve a fake problem. And I do think they will probably wait. The theory of the case is that they will wait until it's almost too late for the courts to step in. But he really wants to do this. He's been very strongly influenced by what's called the Election Integrity Group, which is a group of election deniers who thought that he lost, or they thought that he won in 2020. They took it to court several hundred times around the country and lost every single time. It's Clea Mitchell, and it's Heather Honey, and it's a couple of these other folks, Kirk Olson. All these election deniers are in Trump's ear. Steve Bannon is also one of them. And they are telling him that you have to violate the civil and constitutional rights of Americans to try to preserve the House majority and the Senate majority this fall. It is a constitutional crisis that is going to be loud and noisy, and I think we should very much anticipate that Donald Trump will try to do this.
Right. And Rick, I'm just looking at the front page of tomorrow's Financial Times. WEF, that's the World Economic Forum chief, quits over Epstein leaks. We're talking about Børge Brende, who's a former foreign minister of Norway, I believe. And then he joins a list of other powerful men who have paid a price, not as high, of course, as Epstein's victims, but paid a price in the court of public opinion, like Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, former Prince Andrew, and former Lord Mandelson, Peter Mandelson. How does this strike people in the States, that the people who are being humiliated, who are having their old emails raked over and who are paying for it with their jobs and reputations are not Americans? Mostly, they're Europeans.
You know, the irony of this is that there is a growing awareness, even among Donald Trump's supporters, that accountability is coming for people in the Epstein files unless they're Americans, unless they're friends of Donald Trump, unless they're allies of this White House in particular. And so they are watching Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. They are watching people at extraordinarily high levels of their governments around the world who are implicated in these files, and not even implicated for sexual misconduct of any kind, but implicated for being involved with a man who, at the time they were talking to him, they all knew he was a convicted pedophile. They all understood what he was and who he was and what he did with children. And that sense of dissonance between Americans having a free pass on this and powerful billionaires in America getting away with it, and folks up and down the chain in Europe and beyond paying a price, it has actually begun to be noticed even by Trump's political base.
Right. And final thought, I mean, we're told that something like 3.5 million documents, photos, etc., videos have been released. And I think the Attorney General's office said, that's it, no more. Right. But it is believed that there are possibly 2 or 3 million more. What's it going to take to get those released, do you think? Who's going to make it happen?
Pam Bondi's going to be held in contempt of Congress. She's going to get impeached. And then Todd Blanche is going to be held in contempt of Congress. He's going to get impeached. And these people are going to have to pay the price for breaking the law. And right now, the Department of Justice is a lawless organization in America. We recognize that it is no longer about the faithful execution of the law, but in pursuing the protection of Donald Trump and the persecution of Donald Trump's enemies. So I think you're going to see Congress, especially after November, take a very, very aggressive role and insist that this administration follow the law. And the fact of this, that they want to wave their hands and brush it off and say, oh, we're done now, no more. That's not how the law works, even for these folks.
Okay. Rick Wilson, former Republican strategist and founder of the Lincoln Project. Pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Times Radio.